it makes my day when people say, I showed these videos to my parents and now they're like a little bit suspect of Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson. And that makes my day because that's the goal, is to bring this information because I think it's important. It's the most watched cable news channel in the country. And the feedback is overwhelmingly positive. I get a lot of great comments. I get a lot of great discussion in my replies. Because of algorithms, y'all don't see the hate as much. It's still a tiny percentage of what I get, but it's very aggressive because they're right wingers. It shows me I'm doing something right. But some days, they'll send a ton of rape threats in my DMs or whatever, and it's just like, go get a life.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 7 of the Aaron Rupar Show. I'm really pleased today to be joined by Kat Abugazele. You probably know her on Twitter as Kat Abu. Kat has been watching Tucker Carlson night after night for more than 2 years now for Media Matters, where she works as a researcher. But in recent months, she's really blown up as a TikTok star. She does videos summarizing 5 absurd Fox News stories that people may have missed week in and week out. And more recently, she has branched out to doing more PSA-style content, to doing political commentary. Her videos regularly do hundreds of thousands of views, and it's led to her Twitter account blowing up as well. So we began our conversation by talking about the big Fox news of the day, which was Tucker Carlson's surreal interview last night with Donald Trump. The same Tucker Carlson who just 2 years ago was texting his colleagues and talking about how much he hated Trump, was kissing Trump's ass last night, and doing live hits from outside at Mar-a-Lago, where it appeared that a hurricane of some sort was going on. So the whole thing was very surreal. And we began by talking about that. But then we talk about what it was like becoming a TikTok video star, how Kat switched from being a childhood staunch Republican to being a liberal who lives in DC and is known as the liberal Tucker Carlson watcher for Media Matters. We talk about which Fox News hosts she has a hard time watching, how she produces her videos, and a whole lot more. So before we get to that conversation, just a reminder that you can watch the footage, if you're not doing that right now, of this on YouTube, on my YouTube page, or if you are more of an audio podcast person, I ask that you please subscribe to the Aaron Rupar Show wherever you get your podcasts, and please spread the word about the show by sharing episodes on social media platforms and leaving positive reviews where you can. Next week, I am talking with Dan Frumkin of Press Watchers. We'll talk about coverage of the early stages of the 2024 campaign, things that Dan thinks are going well and maybe things that aren't going so well. So I think that'll be a good conversation about media as well. But without further ado, let's get to my conversation today with Kat. Welcome, everyone, to the Aaron Rupar Show. I'm thrilled today to have Kat Abugazele on the show, also known on Twitter as Kat Abu. I talked with Kat for Public Notice in a Q&A. Actually, Thor Benson did. I ended up kind of writing the top of that, but we talked with her back in January about her day job / night job, as it turns out, which is watching Tucker Carlson and Fox News, doing research on Tucker Carlson and Fox News for Media Matters. And in the 3 months since then, Kat has really blown up, doing weekly recaps of Fox News stories you may have missed on TikTok that are insightful and humorous. And so I want to get into, what it's like to be a TikTok / Twitter sensation, but I feel like we should begin, Kat, with the news of the day, which was the Tuesday night edition of Tucker Carlson, which featured an interview with Donald Trump. And I think it's the first time, maybe you actually would know this, when the last time Trump was on Tucker was. I feel like it's been a very long time.
He has never been on Tucker since I started there in 2020 at Media Matters. And just a correction, Tucker wasn't just interviewing Trump. He was interviewing a demonic force whom he hates passionately. And it really came off as that.
That was what I wanted to get into, because the thing that I could not get out of my mind watching this interview are the Tucker Carlson text messages from the Dominion lawsuit, which were unsealed / kind of released publicly as a result of the proceedings there. And I believe it was just last month that we read these, and these are texts that Tucker sent to his producers, to other Fox News staffers in the months and weeks leading up to January 6th. And in one of them, he wrote, quote, "We are very, very close to being able to ignore Trump most nights. I truly can't wait." And then he wrote in another one, "I hate him passionately." And then when you juxtapose that with this interview last night, where this is a direct quote from one of the little asides that he did in between segments trying to gas up Trump, he said, quote, "For a man who is caricatured as an extremist, we think you will find what he has to say moderate, sensible, and wise." And so the thing that really jumped out to me was that it almost seemed like Tucker was kind of trolling people who, like you and I, are aware of his text messages. I'm assuming that many of his viewers are not, because they're not paying attention to the Dominion lawsuit. They're not reading New York Times, Media Matters for that, for that matter, other places that have covered these text messages. But was that your sense as well? I kind of got this weird sense. It was so surreal the way in between segments that he was talking about Trump, when he clearly doesn't really feel that way about him. I mean, we know that from his private correspondence. It did kind of seem like a troll job to me.
I mean, I think he would love if we thought it was a troll job. I think that he would much rather not have done this interview at all. I mean, it was humiliating. At one time, Trump credited Tucker with the Russia, Russia, Russia catchphrase, which Sean Hannity says, and you could just like see the light fading from his eyes. So I think he'd love it if everyone thought he was like being so smart and 3 steps ahead. I think it was penance, and we still have more to go tonight.
That's right. But typically when they do a second night of these interviews, I mean, usually the good stuff is night one. There might be little bits here and there, although I guess it's all kind of relative, because the other thing that really struck me is that Tucker was basically doing the Hannity method of interviewing Trump, which is tossing out a softball and letting Trump rant for about 5 to 10 minutes in response. I mean, there was really no even, kind of like boilerplate attempt to push back or to generate news with the interview. I mean, so do you have any thoughts on kind of the approach that he took? To me, it very much reminded me of the Hannity approach, which, just to back up a step, back when I was at Think Progress in 2016, my boss at the time, Judd Legum, wrote a post that has aged extremely well, which I think is still available on the internet, about Hannity's technique of interviewing Trump, which he did repeatedly during the 2016 campaign, and how he never generated news during these interviews because there was no attempt to. And that really struck me as kind of the same thing that Tucker was up to last night.
Yeah, I mean, it almost felt like even softer than a Hannity interview. It was, I mean, Tucker barely said anything for like the first 10 minutes. He said, "What did they do with the dogs?" or something. And they were talking about dogs in Afghanistan. And then Trump just kept going. Tucker loves to be the center of attention. There's nothing he hates more than not being the main character. And they gave his entire hour to Trump, and he barely said anything. He didn't even get to do like his silly voice or his aggressive laugh. So yeah, I mean, it was like Hannity, but more defeated.
The other thing that was really funny that comes to mind as you mentioned this is that they were doing the segments in between the interview live on location in Palm Beach, and there was like a hurricane. I mean, it wasn't quite a hurricane, but there was some sort of like severe storm happening behind Tucker. So his hair is blowing around. He even commented a couple times. He had some quip about how he's a weatherman now or something like that. So it just, it seemed like the whole experience was kind of aimed at torturing him, from having to do this puppy interview with Trump to having to be out in, kind of borderline extreme weather in Florida, doing this show live. It was really quite fascinating to watch, at least for people like you and I who are really immersed in this stuff.
Yeah, and that's another thing, is if you're really immersed in this stuff, you pick up on all of these things with like the body language and the cadence in his voice and like what he says that you don't really get if you don't watch it every night. So a lot of people were saying, it's the same face he does every time whenever the camera would go to Tucker and like he just looks dumbfounded. It's not the same face. It is not the same Tucker face from like the live Tucker reaction box. There is something different in his body language, and I hate that I can tell that, but it's there. It's not the same. So having that experience, if you watch Tucker critically every single night, you definitely get the vibes. There were rancid vibes last night.
Yeah. Was there anything about the actual contents of the interview that jumped out at you? I mean, certainly the questions that Tucker asked were not very hard hitting. But anything that Trump said that struck you as, if not newsworthy, at least notable?
The only thing really would be that Tucker asked Trump if there was anything, if he were convicted, that would cause him to drop out of the race. And Trump said nothing. There's nothing that anyone could do to make him drop out of the race.
Yeah, and he has said that a few different times. The one thing that jumped out to me, well, there were a few actually, but I thought that it was more clear than ever. I mean, not that this is really news, that Trump is basically rooting for Russia in Russia's war against Ukraine. He went out of his way to mention at one point that Russia might still take over all of Ukraine. And then there was one really fascinating aside, which I'm guessing you probably picked up on as well, where Trump said something to Tucker. Trump was basically doing his usual anti-Putin rant, and he said something to Tucker along the lines of, I know where you stand on this as well, kind of implying that they're fellow travelers and their anti-Putinism, which I guess in especially Tucker's case at times has veered into outright pro-Putinism. But I thought the comments on the war in Ukraine were quite interesting. And other than that, I mean, I guess as you kind of alluded to, this was perhaps even softer than a Hannity interview. So there's always kind of little bits in the Trump rants. He led the interview by talking about his arraignment in Manhattan. And of course, we got a Sir story with tears. It was kind of the shot chaser of not only a Sir story, but also people crying, where he was saying that the jail workers who processed him ahead of his arraignment were bawling as he was processed because they were so sad over it. So those were a few highlights for me, at least. Anything else jump out to you that we should at least touch upon before I move on?
I really liked when Trump made Tucker apologize for insulting Kim Jong-un in 2019. And he was like, you insulted him, which made things difficult for me. So Tucker had to say sorry. And then he just kept going. And he was like, that must have been the most incredible experience of your life. And Tucker
that's
had
right.
to be like, sure.
Yes, because to back up, when Trump went to North Korea, or at least the DMZ area, and I believe he briefly stepped over into North Korea, which I've actually been up there to the DMZ, and they do have buildings right on the border that are kind of shared between the two countries. And so depending on the day that you're there, technically you are in North Korean territory if you're in, some of these areas right on the border. And so when Trump did this trip up there to do his, handshake with Kim Jong-un, Tucker Carlson went with him, which I'd forgotten. That's one of those things when you metabolize this much Fox News and Trump world stuff, it can be kind of in your brain, out your brain, because, your brain only has so much storage space. And I had forgotten that during that trip in 2019, Tucker Carlson was like right there with Trump as he's meeting with Kim Jong-un, which was so random. That was before you were covering Tucker. I'm trying to remember if he didn't do any like broadcasts on that trip. I don't think, but he was there and Trump reminded him of that.
Yeah, I can't remember specifically, but I remember that he was there. But I was not at Media Matters at that time. I'm sure I would have much more detailed, very weird stories about it.
Sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about you and kind of blowing up as you have in the past few months. Was becoming a TikTok sensation on your 2023 bingo card?
No, it's really weird because I don't even use TikTok as like a consumer. So it's been very interesting, and I can't believe people want to listen to my little rants about Fox.
Yeah, and so how did the idea for I believe initially you were doing kind of the 5 stories you may have missed, which your shift, just to kind of back up a step here, is a nighttime shift. So you're basically covering like the 5 through Laura. Is that correct?
Yeah. And sometimes Gutfeld, occasionally. And
then so occasionally you are incorporating a lot of your video content does cover those primetime shows, but you're also dipping into the dayside stuff a little bit as well. I mean, sometimes there can be gems for you in terms of absurd Fox stuff that happens on Outnumbered or Outnumbered Overtime, which are the Harris Faulkner shows. The other content outside of Fox and Friends tends to be more of the quote unquote news side stuff, which is a little more straightforward than like the primetime commentary or even like the 5 is. But how are you metabolizing that much Fox News? I mean, I know you're obviously watching the primetime stuff, but are you just kind of picking up on clips here and there from the daytime stuff and then going back and grabbing those clips on your own if you need them for your TikToks?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, our day shift does a great job of, monitoring everything happening during the daytime. So sometimes it's, a coworker puts something on Twitter and I'm like, wow, that's nuts. I want to put that in there. Or it goes on our website, or I'm looking through, what's been flagged in our internal channels and think, hey, that would make a fun thing to talk about. But the great thing about being at Media Matters is you have all this infrastructure and these great people that you're working with that support all sides of the equation, whether you're working on Alex Jones or the Spanish language part or, night shift, you can get resources anywhere.
And so are the TikToks that you do, is that kind of a Media Matters product, or is that something you're doing on your own?
No, my TikToks are completely my personal account. All of my social media accounts are personal accounts, not associated with Media Matters, my employer's views, nothing.
Yeah, because
Or
does
my
Media
views are
Matters
not my
have a
employer's.
yeah. Well, that's a disclaimer. I guess these days I don't have to do that because I don't have an employer, but certainly when I was at Vox, there were times where I had to specify that my views were my own. But I would just want to ask you, I don't know how of interest this is going to be to kind of the broader listeners and viewers of this podcast, but myself, as someone who works in the video space a little bit, I am really impressed with the production value of your TikToks because not only are you doing kind of commentary to a camera and you're splicing your commentary where you're doing kind of like sound bites, so there's editing that goes into that, but then on top of that, you're incorporating graphics, you're incorporating video clips. So just give me like kind of a 30,000 foot view on how you're producing these, how time consuming it is, because, I do kind of minimally produce videos at times where I'm doing, like frames with chyrons or, cross dissolves, things like that. I'm very basic. I'm not a video producer, but even just doing very basic production can be time consuming. I'm guessing for you, it's gotten more efficient as you go because you're doing more and more TikToks, which we'll get into. You're not just doing the weekly recaps, but you're doing more kind of like PSA style TikToks, just news commentary. But, what does it look like for you to produce one of these videos?
Well, before I did these for since 2020, I guess at Media Matters, I was making, supercuts and videos about the week, but nothing on camera. I've been video editing since I was a kid. It's just like a hobby. And then Media Matters offered to get me a Premiere subscription, so I didn't have to keep making fake emails for free trials. And then when I decided to do the on-cam stuff this year, I'm still figuring how to balance everything. I basically don't have a personal life right now. But like for the weekly recaps, for example, throughout the week, I have, a file for that week of different clips that I see, because I do one that's like a longer supercut that goes on Twitter and my YouTube. And then I have the TikTok version that's just like 5 ridiculous stories. And so I get those clips. Usually a lot of them I happen to do on Thursday because there's a lot of stuff happening during the week. And then I wake up at like 6 a.m. on Friday, put all my clips in, move all of my furniture out of the way, film it on my phone, usually like 2 or 3 takes, depending on how tired I am. And then after that, I just plug it in Premiere. And I have a lot of people ask why my TikToks look so smooth. And it's because I don't use the TikTok app. The TikTok app is not good. Don't use it for editing. And you can get a lot smoother cuts and a lot closer things. You can really make a good use of your time if you just do it in Premiere and shave off, 2 seconds here, 2 seconds there.
What are your thoughts on this conversation that's been a big part of our politics in recent months about banning TikTok? You are obviously, you have a significant presence on there. You have over 100,000 TikTok followers. I have never really been on TikTok aside from watching TikTok videos, which I guess betrays my I'm elder millennial, I guess, at this point. Maybe I should get on there. With the implosion of Twitter, it seems like we all need as many life drafts as we can get. But what are your thoughts? I mean, do you think that there is actually some merit to this idea that TikTok is harmful? I guess my kind of default view on it has been that all social media has harmful aspects. I don't know if we want to get too heavy-handed with the government, and in some cases, politicians who very clearly have a political agenda and want to look very tough on China starting to ban platforms. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of just like, oh, this is an easy target for attacking China. Whether it's valid or not, that's up for debate for other people. I think that it's a very important part of free speech, especially with American youth today. Whoever bans TikTok, if they ever do it, is going to lose the Gen Z vote forever. That's just what's going to happen. I do think, there are harms with every social media, but I can't imagine being in a high school and having TikTok and like having that be a hobby. That just sounds so stressful. I look at these filters and stuff like that. I mean, I think there is, measurable harm with everything. I don't know what the solution is there. I just know that, these kids are going through it. But at the same time, they're learning a lot of things that they wouldn't have access to, especially as states ban books and different types of education. Um, so, just like everything, it's a mixed bag with all social media.
Mm,
And if you're going to talk about the nanny state, then maybe you shouldn't ban an app people like to use.
yeah. And I mean, because you're quite natural at being on camera like that, I'm sure it's still kind of stressful and time consuming. But I do think this isn't any reason to ban the platform, but there is something kind of odd to me, at least. And maybe this is just, again, me being in more of a Twitter generation where I'm used to expressing thoughts via text. Just being on camera constantly, I think, would be kind of exhausting. But that, again, is not any reason to ban a platform. I guess that's just, it says something about what it takes to be like a power user on there.
I mean, it's doubly exhausting for like me and a lot of other women because I get up and I have worn more makeup in the last 3 months than I have in my entire life because
Yeah.
my tripod is like a few feet away from me. So you look weird unless you have, noticeable eyeliner and solid foundation. So it takes a while to get ready in the morning before I do a video because I know with every single video, I'm going to be under a microscope with, right wingers that are
True.
attacking everything they can. So that's honestly one of the most time consuming parts. I had to prep my hair the night before, whether it's like braiding it or blow drying it or whatever it is. And I have to put on makeup and I have to pick out my clothes. Sometimes I do like 2 different takes with 2 different outfits.
Wow.
And I know plenty of other women that have the same situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I clearly do not have that situation going on camera here. I put a t-shirt on and that's one good thing. I started shaving my head during COVID because I didn't want, in the early days to go to a barbershop and I just keep doing it. So makes it easy for things like this. But, I have noticed in looking at some of the feedback to your videos that is overwhelmingly positive. I'm sure there are people who are trolling you or, calling you a Marxist or, the types of things that any progressive gets kind of working in the online space. But, what has been kind of is that consistent with your experience as well, that you're getting a lot of positive feedback? And then I've also noticed that, a lot of people who comment on your videos don't seem to be heavy Fox News viewers. And so I think in a lot of instances, you're kind of opening people's eyes to the fact that the top rated cable news network is basically brain poison. But what's that been like for you? Do you find it kind of validating that you're getting a lot of, positive reinforcement, people who are valuing your videos, or maybe I'm just not seeing the negative comments?
No, I mean, that's a big thing. And it makes my day when people say, I showed these videos to my parents and now they're like a little bit suspect of Sean Hannity or Tucker Carlson. And that makes my day because that's the goal, is to bring this information because I think it's important. It's the most watched cable news channel in the country. And, the feedback is overwhelmingly positive. I get a lot of great comments. I get a lot of great discussion in my replies. Because of algorithms, y'all don't see the hate as much. It's still a tiny percentage of what I get, but it's very aggressive because they're right wingers. It shows me I'm doing something right. But some days, like, they'll send a ton of rape threats in my DMs or whatever. And it's just like, go get a life.
Yeah.
But overall, it's very positive. And it's nice to see people also defending other people in their replies, not just me, but when like right wingers come in and try to spam replies, to see people push back against that and say, hey, this is incorrect. Or, like, why did you say that? It's nice to see.
Have you heard from anyone at Fox directly about your videos, or, people who send you tips about things? I've had a couple sources over the years who are Fox employees who will kind of, if they have an axe to grind with colleagues, will send me little clips or suggest that I pull certain segments, things like that. I mean, is that anything you've experienced as well, or do they kind of leave you alone? I mean, obviously you've got to be on the radar to some extent, just given the visibility that your videos have.
Yeah, I mean, I sometimes have people like quote tweet. They're always like, these Fox side characters that you don't really know unless you watch a lot of Fox.
Sure.
And I've had some people retweet things because they think I'm saying something good and then they just get dunked on in their replies. But no, I haven't really interacted with a lot of people at Fox.
Sure. Just to get into Fox a little bit deeper, I've noticed in watching, going back and watching a few of your videos and prepping for today, especially the weekly recap ones, that in addition to seeing a lot of Tucker Carlson, it seems like you are clipping pretty heavily from The Five and Jesse Waters as well. But in terms of like comparing the various hosts and shows, what has this exercise in doing kind of weekly recaps of Fox News absurdity taught you in terms of, are there any specific hosts that really pop as being leading purveyors of ridiculousness on Fox, or is it kind of spread evenly between the shows?
I'd say Tucker and Jesse have the strongest ones. Jason Whitlock's a pretty good bet when he goes on Tucker's show. If Kilmeade's guest hosting, you will hear some of the dumbest things you've ever heard in your life. Same with Will Kane and Pete Hegseth. But I do have to say, like, for Night Shift, we all have hosts that we do not want to watch. So I've developed a
Can I guess yours? Can I guess yours?
Yeah.
Because is it Hannity?
No.
Oh, it's not Hannity, because I
No.
feel like he doesn't appear that often in your videos. So that'd be
No,
my
it's
guess.
it's Jesse. The only reason that
Okay.
Hannity doesn't show up in my videos is because he can't finish a sentence. He just keeps a different sentence halfway through. Like, he starts new ones. And so it doesn't make sense for like a video format, because you lose
Sure.
people. Because it's like, what the hell are you saying, man?
Yeah.
No, I used to be on Hannity in 2020. He's annoying, but like, he's stupid. But Jesse Waters, just for some reason, there's something there that I'm like, I can't stand him. I would rather watch Tucker, Hannity, and Laura in a row than watch Jesse's whole show.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of casual misogyny baked into his show, in my experience, and his show just kind of leaves you feeling slimy and bad. I mean, it's kind of for frat boys, it feels like. So I get that for sure. And with Hannity, it just seems like he basically does the same show every night, with slight variations. So I can see how that could be kind of demoralizing, having to watch that over and over. And you're right, also. Yeah, go ahead.
It feels like he's like a Make-A-Wish kid for Fox. Like, they just let him keep his show because he wants it so bad. I don't understand why he still has that time slot.
How are his, I know this isn't necessarily a part of your job, but Tucker is still kind of dominant in his time slot, right? I did see that Maddow beat him just a few nights ago, which was news because that doesn't happen that often. Hannity, and correct me again if I'm wrong here, but his ratings have been sagging a little bit, which I think is probably part of the reason they're doing that studio audience thing now, which is deeply weird. But am I right on that he's he's doing okay but not great, and maybe that studio audience thing is kind of a attempt to inject some life into his show? Because to me it just seems like kind of the same thing, same guests, same rants over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, he's the old guard, and it's very obvious. We actually have a whole article, I forgot who wrote it, at Media Matters, talking about Hannity. He used to be the king of Fox, and now he's just a relic. Tucker overtook him almost instantly, and the Five and Tucker are neck and neck for the first top spot every week. And then you have Jesse, who came in, and for some reason people like that. And Hannity's just been doing the same shtick, saying the same things. I'm pretty sure everyone on my team can create a 20-minute Hannity monologue, like total improv, because he just says the same things every single time.
That'd be a fun, being at a Media Matters party would be fun because, you could do impersonations all night. There's a certain irony in you being known now as like this big time progressive on social media, because when we talked to you for the newsletter back in January, something that I did not know about you is that you mentioned that you grew up in the South as a Republican. So tell me a little bit about your journey from, obviously when you're a kid, you don't always have the strongest political convictions. I'm assuming probably your family had something to do with that, but just tell me about your journey from being in the South, being a Republican, to coming to DC and being very progressive these days.
Yeah, I mean, once again, my views are completely my own for candidates, political stuff, anything. That's all me, not my employer. I grew up with my grandmother, was basically a GOP operative. She was the head of the Texas Republican Women's. Whenever we, get lunch together, she'd always talk to me about like how socialism was bad. And I've always been interested in politics since I was a little kid. And so I just ate that up, and I've always been pretty much just as outspoken as now. And so I would try to convince my friends on the playground to like be Republicans and like vote Bush and all these things, which in like the, elementary school election. And so I wanted to have those convictions because this matriarch of our family had essentially imprinted that on everyone in the family. And in like 2011, I guess, 2010, 2011, like the dawn of Tumblr, when it was the Wild West out there, I went on there and, that was a fun time. But I met a lot of people with different points of views that I'd never heard. And so that was like the seed. And then we moved to Tucson halfway through high school. And pretty much, I'd say half at least of my high school was low income and or undocumented. And I had just never been exposed to that ever. And it just shattered that like bootstrap myth in my head, having friends that I knew and loved and thought they were some of the smartest people I've ever known not be able to go to college because they had to stay home and help their family, or they can't even afford it with the financial aid. Um, and that kind of shattered everything. And Trump didn't help. That was just like a nice push out the door. But from, when I was like 11 till then, it was basically me trying to reckon this conservative upbringing because I didn't want to admit that I was wrong. That's always hard when you're trying to reevaluate your political beliefs. I'm always amazed at older people who do this. Like my mother's done that, to be able to objectively look at that. And I've always been trying to reckon that with, being a staunch feminist and all of these things. And then finally I realized I don't have to do that. I can just realize this is wrong. And I want people to get the help they need. And that's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Was your family watching Fox when you were a kid?
My parents watched like everything.
Yeah.
But, Fox was growing up in Texas. Fox was on in public all the time. Like that's what you turn on.
So was there kind of a light bulb moment for you when you realized that Fox is propaganda? I mean, again, I don't know how much it was a part of your childhood in terms of being on at home, that sort of thing. But was that kind of a gradual realization that there's a little bit more going on here than presenting the news? Or was there like a specific, you were watching tuned into a show and it kind of hits you that, this isn't on the level?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't really watching a lot of Fox then. Honestly, we watched CNN a lot growing up, even though we were a conservative family. My mom has always been pretty moderate. And, we were very accepting, but you still had this label that you had on there. I'm not sure if you saw a picture on my Twitter of my laptop with like the GOP elephant with the bow and the pearls.
No, I didn't see this.
Yeah, I was like so proud of this girl for becoming a Media Matters hack 5 years later. It's a picture of me in high school.
Oh my goodness. That was only 5. Yeah. So you were a Trump supporter then.
No.
Oh, okay.
So I guess maybe it was 16. Okay. So like 7 or 8 years later, I think. Okay. Sure. Because I was fully in for Hillary, but I wrote a thing in my yearbook about how Romney's the future of the Republican Party. I'm actually blushing saying this. Wow. Yeah. Kill me. But there was like no real realization. It was just slowly being like, oh, and I've always been a really good debater. I was, in speech and debate and won a lot of stuff. And so I'd be able to convince people that these things were right, but they weren't. And like, I want to go back in time and just shake me in class and be like, stop it. It's okay. You can just want to help people and not make an excuse for it. You don't need to say, oh, it's because I'm a private citizen, which is an actual argument I made. Oh my God. Some people everyone deserves to have rights and have a house and have medical care. It's fine. Right.
It's wild that that's even a political statement these days.
I know. Like
such is the state of our politics.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, kind of spinning off that, you've started doing videos on different topics that aren't just directly recapping Fox News. I mean, you had one that I thought was pretty fascinating about things that people can do to fight back against Fox, and you shouted out in that a number of organizations specifically, but the thrust of it was basically, that there are things you can do in terms of contacting Fox advertisers to put pressure on them, not just to break with Tucker Carlson, but with other programming on the show if they're still advertising on other programming. And the other was contacting advertisers. There was another specific kind of
subscriber fees.
Yes, that's right. The subscriber fees so your cable provider is obviously charging you, they're being charged to carry Fox. And so asking them to drop Fox as part of their programming packages is another way to actually do something besides just kind of criticize Fox, put these videos out there highlighting the absurdity. I mean, there are things that people can do to push back. But, at the same time, Media Matters for years and years, probably before you were even there. I mean, remember back in 2017-18, when they would do campaigns against Tucker advertisers, there was a big campaign, if I'm recalling correctly, against Ingram advertisers after her comments about shut up and dribble, which she said, when LeBron James had expressed some sort of political viewpoint that I think was basically anti-racism. And it doesn't really, these shows are still on the air, obviously. So I guess, what is your, how viable do you think campaigns like that are? Is it just sort of, with in your mind a sense of this is the one thing that people can do regardless of how successful it may end up being? Or do you really think that, these campaigns, which may not have had success in the past, if there's enough buy-in, enough awareness about what people can do, especially on the consumer front, that they could force some change, or at least, some shred of accountability from Fox executives?
I mean, I included advertisers in there because that's like the easiest thing in terms of public shaming. But Media Matters campaigns against Fox advertisers have been wildly successful. Here's the thing, though. Fox could lose all of its advertisers and still come out wildly profitable because of subscriber fees. They had the highest subscriber fee after ESPN. So that's the big thing, is talking to cable providers, making it an add-on like HBO or Stars. And I think with enough pressure saying you're going to drop cable unless Fox is an add-on, I think that's the most viable way to get Fox to cut back on its misinformation, or at least limit Fox's exposure, and the way that it can just survive off of your dollars, even if you hate it.
So when you say that Fox would be an add-on, is the idea there that basically consumers could opt in and like pay a little extra to get Fox? Would that be kind of how that model would work?
Right. You could pay the more than $20 a year that you're already paying if you want to keep it, or you could keep that and buy 3 lattes or something.
Yeah.
Or depending on where you live.
Yeah, because I mean, and I guess when you say that the campaigns against Tucker have been successful, there have been a number of advertisers who have severed ties with him. Have some of them come back over the years, though? I mean, I could imagine a situation where some of these advertisers, if they're under pressure, back away, but then when the heat cools down a little bit, they come back. Is that something that Media Matters tracks?
I can't think of a specific one. You'd probably have to ask some other people on our team. But the advertisers now, I mean, it's basically just like erectile dysfunction drugs, My Pillow, and then weird ads for Facebook groups. It's gotten really weird over the last couple of years. And
but with Tucker, it's more of the advertising revenue for him obviously matters, but when his ratings are as strong as they are, is there kind of a sense, do you think, among Fox executives that it's worth it to have him on TV, even if the ads he has to sell are kind of these lowbrow ads just because of the audience that he's tapping into?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it keeps people on for Hannity or Laura, or puts people on Jesse's show. And also, he's the face of their streaming service, Fox Nation. And he has 2 shows on there. So it doesn't really matter if he's not getting advertisers, because he's bringing people to Fox in general.
Yeah. So then does that lead you to the conclusion that maybe the most effective way to go is more of the pressuring cable companies instead of advertisers, or more of an all of the above approach, do you think?
I mean, there's a lot of work that can be done with advertisers, but a lot of it's already been done. I highly recommend people drop their cable service unless they're allowed to opt out of Fox.
Just with the last couple minutes we have left, I'm curious what is in store for you as we go forward, especially with your TikTok videos. It seems like they are, when I say TikTok videos, obviously they're on Twitter as well. They are kind of like shot in a way for TikTok, but you repost them. So you can find them on Twitter too, even if you're not on TikTok. But what are you hoping to kind of branch out into going forward? I mean, is it something that's just kind of unfolding organically for you in terms of, you've kind of dipped your toes into doing political commentary a little bit, doing more PSA style stuff like we just talked about with what people can do to fight back against Fox? Or are you kind of planning specific content as we go forward this year?
I'm having a lot of fun doing longer form content on YouTube. That's been a blast to do. So I have a lot of stuff in the works for there. I've got a fun explainer, fun used very liberally, about white Christian nationalism that'll probably be out in the next 2 weeks. But that's been really fun to be able to just like talk and do a deep dive into something and have all of that right there, a good explainer that you can point to if someone needs it, like the Mike Huckabee one I did.
I was just just to touch upon one specific one. You have done a multi-part explainer on these Mike Huckabee ads. So just with the couple minutes we have left, kind of briefly explain what these ads are and how you unpack them in your videos.
The Mike Huckabee Kids Guide is an ad that goes on Fox a lot. And usually right after they talk about like liberal indoctrination, and it's actual indoctrination. So the ones that I've covered are like the Kids Guide to Cancel Culture and Free Speech, the Kids Guide to Race in America, the Kids Guide to President Trump. There are a lot of kids guides, and they're all horrible. I mean, the Kids Guide to Fighting Socialism literally just has a page that says capitalism good, socialism bad on it, just right out there. It just goes for it.
Well, isn't the idea that these are free, but get
they're
you on
not free?
Yeah.
Oh, I need to cancel the ones for the new one. Thank you for the reminder, because I got 3 others this month. They're not free. It says they're free, but you pay $1 actually for shipping and handling, and then you pay a second $1 for a second patriotic children's magazine that Mike Huckabee has. And then if you forget to cancel, you have to pay him $10 per kids guide. No, sorry, 20, I think, per kids guide per month. Wow. And also they try to get you to like get another thing and you think it's free, but then they charge you $10. I've given Mike Huckabee like $30 at this point, and I'm really mad about it.
Well, at least I guess these are for your personal TikToks as well. So you can't even, ask Media Matters to cover that for you.
Yeah. It's Mike Huckabee hates me. He's bane of my existence at this point. I see him when I close my eyes.
Yeah. And, these are the ads that run on America's most watched cable network. So,
and it's only a matter of time before we see them in Arkansas schools. So.
Wow. Yeah. Well, on that note, Kat, thank you so much for joining. I really appreciate your time. And if people do want to follow you, I know that I'm guessing most listeners know who you are, but your pinned tweet kind of directs people to all of your different platforms. And what is your handle on Twitter?
Abu Ghazali Kat. I know it's a pain in the ass to type, but it makes people learn how to spell it. Yeah,
and I think if you enter Kat Abu into the search bar, it'll pull up your. Yeah. So thanks again. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
That does it for today's episode of the Aaron Rupar Show. Please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and also follow me on YouTube to watch the footage of the show each week. You can find me there at the Aaron Rupar Show. New episodes drop every Wednesday, so be sure to check out your feeds each week for a new installment of the show, and thanks for listening.